Hey y'all, good morning. It's Monday. Today's morning devotion, it's motivation as well, is from Genesis 15:7 through 21. I read, it's really a continuation of what I read before, but Abram asked this question, and he's basically asking God, like, how can I know? God is reminding him of what he said. And Abram is like, yeah, but how can I know? How can I be sure? How can I be certain? And I feel like I ask that question to God a lot. I feel like that's a question maybe a lot of us ask to God a lot, is like, you're saying all of these things, but how can I know? And to me, God doesn't answer his question. God just like makes him this promise and tells him what's going to happen. And in God telling him the promise, like, he tells him the good, the end result, but then he also tells him like the tough stuff in the middle. And I think it's a reminder that just because God gives us a promise or tells us how something is going to end up does not mean it's always going to be a straight line, like from point A to point B, and we're going to get there fast and there's no messy stuff in the middle. I think that just because we're not necessarily going in a straight line, that doesn't mean that God's promise is no longer in effect or effective in working in our life, and we just have to hold on to that promise. So I think God basically, he made a covenant with Abram. He made him lay out the animals and sacrifice, and then in a vision, like, the fire came and walked through the halves, and that's like the fire is symbolic of God's presence, and cutting the animals in half is like, it tells us that that's a covenant that they are making together. So it's like a real promise. It's not one of those flimsy promises. But still, I feel like after God even does all of that for Abram, he could still have, okay, but yeah, how do I know? Like, God didn't give him a practical or logical explanation or reasoning as to how all of these things were going to pass. It's just that God said it and he promised it. So at the end of the day, yeah, we can ask ourselves, how can I know? How do I know? How can I be certain? But really, the real question we need to ask is, like, do I trust God at his word? Because God's word should be enough for me to believe. It should be enough for me to trust. It should be enough for me to put my faith into action. So it's not, we need to move from beyond needing to understand to being able to trust God and what he says he is going to do. So I wrote out like a short little prayer. It says, Lord, help me to believe and not doubt, to trust and not wonder. Transition my ifs to wins, and may all my what ifs be positive. I hope you have a great day and learn to just take God at his word. Let that be enough, and stop worrying about all the little details and everything.